An anti-racist idea is any idea that suggests the racial groups are equal in all their apparent differences, that there is nothing right or wrong with any racial group. Anti-racist ideas argue that racist policies are the cause of racial inequities. So that would be the fundamental basis for the group and their movement.
So it's about equality of outcome.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I understand why the issue is raised, because normally when we talk about systematic racism that still lingers in the system, what people are referring to is the inequality that has resulted from all the policies that used to be really racist, like Jim Crow and all that other stuff. And I've heard most liberals concede that the rules now are generally fair when it comes to like getting hired with like laws against discrimination and stuff like that. But the issue that I understand that where this movement kind of comes from is, since a lot of black communities were kind of left behind and less members of the black communities made it to the middle class, they basically need that economic inequality addressed, because you can make the argument that like redlining and gerrymandering and all that stuff that happened back when the rules were still very racist still impacts the black community today.
Mm-hmm.
And because of having like a further back finish line, or starting line, if you will, makes the playing field unfair.
Yeah.
And I agree with that to an extent. I'd like to see more infrastructure being used like in those sort of areas. But I guess the jump for me is that defunding the police is basically the big move with this movement. Like, I feel like the solution and the problem do not match up. I feel like going after the police is not like the best way to go about this. I understand the idea is cut funds away from the police department, then move them to like schools and education infrastructure and stuff. But I really don't think it's that simple, because I think you're going to be pouring more money into that infrastructure if the crime rate doesn't go down. And I don't think the crime rate will go down. In fact, in a lot of major cities right now, the crime rate's going up.
Well, yeah, you're going to see that first because there's a lot of unrest. And I think that comes with the territory.
Well, I don't know. A lot of these cities that are trying to implement policies that are actually going to defund the police are getting close to that. Also implemented policies where they let go a lot of prisoners right at the beginning of COVID. Now their crime's going up. Then they're on the defund the police thing, and the crime rates are still going up. And yeah, some of that has to do with civil unrest, no doubt. But like, they keep doing these policies that almost seem to clash, because and the crime rates are going up, and they just keep doing things that I think will feed into that problem. How many policies can directly like lead to an increased crime rate before it's too much at once? Wouldn't you think that if you want to
Well, I would say I don't necessarily think that defunding the police is going to lead to an increase in crime rate. You're going to see the increase of a crime rate immediately, but you're not. I think if you put the money into better social areas such as education and infrastructure, it's going to balance itself out. You're going to see it probably a leeway right away, but I think over time it fixes itself. Because you're given better opportunities, a better education system, more housing opportunities. You have a less militarized police force. You have a police force that, like, only 8% of police force, I'll give Minneapolis for example.
Mm-hmm.
I think sort of this tension between Minneapolis and their police officers is that only 11% of the officers live in Minneapolis.
Okay.
Yeah, they live in the suburbs.
Yeah, they don't. There's no relation. There's the bonds.
I mean, okay.
Yeah.
If the point here is that it would be better to have cops from the city, that way there's more of a sense of community, I 100% agree with that point.
But and the communities are also damaged because there's so much money being poured into this force that has no really. They feel no responsibility to have these tight bonds with their community.
Yeah. Well,
all this money that's being poured in could be going elsewhere to fix a broken education system.
I guess where I just get a little lost on this whole like solution to this problem is that I don't think these infrastructure investments will pay off unless the crime rate drops alongside with them. Because if the crime rate stays high, the infrastructure won't last. You're going to be spending more money in this area. Because, like, that's another thing. Like, good teachers is part of the infrastructure, and good educators, and people who will actually improve upon the community. Like, these good workers, a lot of them have other options because they're good at their jobs and stuff. So even if you increased a lot of the infrastructure, especially with education in an area, what's going to make skilled educators want to live there and teach there if the crime rate hasn't been taken care of?
No, I think you got a fair point, but I do think a lot of those educators see firsthand they're not just living in the midst of crime. They're teaching these people, trying to make better people. And I think if you find some way to relate to the people that you're teaching and sort of find some comfort in trying to groom them to be men or women.
I mean, I agree with all of this. Like, does the argument just go back to the police force should care more about the community and it should be a more community-centric thing?
Yeah, I think that, but I also think that the funds necessary that make them so militarized isn't necessary at all.
I mean, it depends on the area. Like, I guess my only thing is there's a lot of protests that have gone to, like, a riot level that have been going on for a while here. And obviously, it does make me, like, very nervous about the country we live in when I see, like, tear gas being used willy-nilly on protesters, because I don't like that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, some of these people are throwing, like, firebombs into federal buildings and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how long do you let this stuff go on before you...
Yeah.
Because... I'll let you say something in a second, but it's my bad, I'm sorry. It's not just, like, a people versus the government thing. There's other people who are being, like, trying to live their lives, and they're kind of being disturbed by a lot of the chaos that's going on in these cities. And a lot of these people who live in these communities still face a lot of the, like, lower class struggles that the people protesting are experiencing. And anyone protesting peacefully is automatically put in the same boat as the people trying to escalate it. And I guess my whole thing is, like, I don't really see what's so bad about trying to bring the people who are escalating it to justice. And when there's a big masses of people crowded around a federal building, your options on how to do that become narrow.
What people surrounding that government building? I get the people that are obviously doing something wrong when it comes to firebombing and stuff like that. That is, we agree on that. But a wall of suburban moms or a wall of veterans.
Some Karens?
No, like, they all wear yellow shirts and they all lock arms and they just stand there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they got arrested.
And they got arrested and tear gassed.
Yeah. Like,
that shouldn't be confusing.
I mean, it's not, but the thing is I'm also only hearing stories when I hear these things. Like, you know what I mean? I only know what the police tell me, and then I have to remember that the police have an agenda, and then I only know what the media tells me, and I gotta remember that the media has an agenda, and then you have the word of the person being arrested, and if they were doing something wrong, they're not gonna admit it. Like, I don't know, it's just complicated for me as a bystander to look at it and get clarity of information to know exactly what side to take.
Okay, so let's say they were tear gas. Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
What did they do to deserve that? What would, in your opinion,
be
grounds for that if you're just locking arms?
Well, based on your story, nothing. But all I know is the story.
Were they out past curfew? Or, like, what was the
if you're past curfew.
No, I'm saying, but they're violating the city instructions. Like, say what Jacob Fry did for Minneapolis. You cannot go out, otherwise there will be consequences. And maybe that, I mean, I'm not saying that's a consequence because that should be, because I do not agree with tear gas, obviously. That's pretty bad to do to somebody, especially innocent people like that. But, like, at the same time, how do you control these mass groups of people that are like doing that? You know, like, who's in charge of that? Like Jacob Fry, for example. I've personally met him before. He's came to one of my classes and talked to him. He's kind of he's
very young.
He's very young. Yeah, he's a pretty nice guy. He's pretty appealing to most people, and he's very left, which is also Minneapolis-like, was what you expect. And just the way that he, like, handled the entire situation of Minneapolis, like, up front. Like, I remember some BLM protesters came up to him in Minneapolis. He's like, Jacob, do you want to defund the police? And he goes, no. And then, boom, the Black Lives Matter movement just completely derails him and just gets, like, cancels him almost.
Yep. That's a good point.
So it's like, how do you handle that as like a leader of a major city in America? And that's going on in more cities too. Obviously, it could spread from Minneapolis just
Yeah.
out of that one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't disagree with. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you on that. Like,
Yeah.
if you're out past curfew, you are, like you said.
You're at your own risk, you know. Like,
Yeah, but I don't think that it requires force.
Okay, so with the story about the mom's Lincoln Arms,
Yeah.
like I said, don't really know anything about that. I mean, that could easily be a police abuse of power, and based on how you described it, it probably is. And obviously, when you have a police force that has militarized capability, there's going to be like misfires, and those are like really awful, and people making those decisions should be held accountable. But like, do you think tear gas? Do you think there's ever a time for it to be used? It's basically what I'm asking.
Well, no, it's considered a war crime by the Geneva Convention, so no, I don't.
Well, the reason they called it a war crime is because they basically want that out of combat. Like it's you.
But these aren't combat zones.
But that's the thing.
They kind of made it though.
Tear gas doesn't like kill people either. Like
No.
we're not the only country in the world that uses tear gas as riot control. Basically, any country with like some sort of riot police, which is like all of them, all the developed ones at least, use tear gas or some sort of gas. In fact, I'm not even sure if it's accurate to call it tear gas because I don't know
It
what.
is. A doctor actually questioned that. Yeah.